On March 14, 2024, two bodies with multiple gunshot wounds were discovered in a cheap motel room on Buckner Avenue. This event was the culmination of a week of mounting tension, broken trust, and a chain of decisions that led to tragedy. Emiliano Flores had been working as a security guard at North Park Mall for 5 years. The job was monotonous, patrolling the corridors, checking CCTV cameras, resolving minor conflicts between visitors. His salary allowed him to rent a one-room apartment in the Oak Cliff neighborhood and save small amounts for the future. Emiliano was 29 years old and felt it was time to settle down. 3 years ago, he met Elia Marquez at a party thrown by mutual friends. She worked as an administrator at a dental clinic, was quiet, neat, and didn't ask for much. They started dating, and gradually, their relationship grew into something serious. Last summer, Emiliano proposed. Elia accepted without hesitation. The wedding was set for March 15th. There was 1 week left. On the evening of March 7th, Emiliano was sitting in a bar on Greenville Avenue with 4 friends. It was his bachelor party, although calling a gathering in a half-empty establishment a party was an exaggeration. Tyler Erickson, his best friend since high school, ordered several pitchers of beer and chicken wings. Tyler worked as a mechanic at a car repair shop. He was a tall, broad-shouldered guy with a crew cut and hands that were always stained with oil. He was going to be the best man at the wedding. Sitting next to him was Brett Harper, Emiliano's co-worker, a 32-year-old divorced man with a tired face and a cynical outlook on life. 2 others, Kevin and Jamal, whom Emiliano knew from the gym, made up the group, but they didn't really join in the conversation. The music played softly. In the corner, a few people watched basketball on TV. The waitress brought another pitcher, and Tyler poured beer into glasses. "Well, brother, in a week you'll be a married man," Tyler said, raising his glass. "To you and Elijah." The others joined in the toast. Emiliano drank slowly, staring at the table. He felt he should be happier than he actually was. "What's wrong?" Tyler asked, noticing his mood. "Are you nervous?" Emiliano shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe I am nervous. It's just that Elia has been acting strange these past few weeks. It's like her thoughts are somewhere else." "How is she acting strange?" Tyler leaned back in his chair and picked up a wing from his plate. "Distant. She used to always answer her calls and text me back. Now she might not respond for hours. She says she's stuck at work, but when I come to pick her up, she's already left and is standing outside. She's constantly on her phone. When I ask who she's texting, she brushes it off, saying it's her friends, work." Brett listened silently, sipping his beer. His face remained impassive. "Listen, it's normal," Tyler said reassuringly. "Weddings are stressful. There's a lot to do, all the planning, the dresses, the flowers, the guests. She's just worried that everything will go well. All brides are like that before their wedding." "Maybe," Emiliano said, not sounding convinced. "But I have a feeling she's hiding something." "You're overthinking it." Tyler patted him on the shoulder. "Elia's a good girl. She loves you. Don't drive yourself crazy." Brett finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "Women always hide things. It's in their nature." Tyler glanced at him quickly, but said nothing. Emiliano nodded, though Brett's words brought him no relief. The rest of the evening was spent talking about work, sports, and plans for the future. Emiliano tried to relax, but his anxiety wouldn't let go. The next day, March 8th, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there was a rehearsal for the wedding at the Baptist Church on Lancaster Road. The church was small, with white walls and wooden benches. Inside, it smelled of old wood and candles. The priest, an elderly man with gray hair and a kind face, greeted them at the entrance. Elia's parents, Gabriel and Lucia Marquez, a respectable middle-aged couple, were present. Gabriel worked as a foreman at a factory, and Lucia was a homemaker. They were polite to Emiliano, but kept their distance, as if they did not fully approve of their daughter's choice. Emiliano's mother, Rosa Flores, came in her best dress, but still looked tired. She worked in a laundry, and years of hard labor had left their mark on her face. Emiliano had no father. He left the family when the boy was 7 years old. Tyler stood next to Emiliano, dressed in dark jeans and a shirt. Chanel Covington, Elia's friend and maid of honor, was talking to Lucia about some details of the ceremony. Chanel worked as a nurse and was an energetic woman with quick movements and a loud voice. Elia was the last to arrive. She wore a simple gray dress, and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked pale, with dark circles under her eyes. When Emiliano tried to catch her eye, she turned away, pretending to look at the interior of the church. The priest began to explain the order of the ceremony. He spoke slowly, showing where everyone should stand, when to enter, and where to look. Emiliano listened half-heartedly. He watched Elia. She stood opposite him, nodding at the priest's words, but her hands nervously fiddled with the hem of her dress. When the priest asked them to hold hands to rehearse the exchange of rings, Elia's palms were cold and clammy. Elia, repeat after me. I, Elia Marquez, take you, Emiliano Flores. Elia's voice trembled, and she stumbled over her words. The priest patiently corrected her. Emiliano felt his anxiety growing. This was not just the bride's pre-wedding jitters. Something was wrong. The rehearsal ended 40 minutes later. Elia's parents exchanged a few words with Rosa, then left first. Chanel hugged Elia and whispered something in her ear, then left as well. Tyler shook Emiliano's hand. Rosa approached her son, gave him a quick hug, and quietly asked if everything was all right. Emiliano assured her that everything was fine. When they were alone, Emiliano and Elia went out to the parking lot. Emiliano's car, an old Honda Civic, was parked under a tree. They got in, and Emiliano started the engine but didn't move. Elia, we need to talk, he said, turning to her. She was looking out the window. About what? About us. About what's going on. You realize you've been acting strange lately, right? I don't know what you're talking about. Her voice was tense. You're avoiding me. You don't answer my calls. You're constantly distracted. If you have doubts about the wedding, it's better to say so now than later. Elia turned sharply toward him. I don't have any doubts, Emiliano. I just have a lot on my plate, a lot of stress. Organizing a wedding isn't as easy as it seems. I have to think about a million things at once. Is it just stress? Nothing else? Yes, just stress, she said quickly, too quickly. It's just nerves. In a week it will all be over and we'll be happy. I promise. Emiliano wanted to believe her. He nodded, though his uneasiness remained. Okay, if you say so. Elia smiled tensely and put her hand on his shoulder. Can we stop by the supermarket? I need to buy something for the house. Sure. He pulled the car out of the parking lot and headed for the nearest Target. The drive took 10 minutes. Elia was silent the whole way, staring out the window. When they parked, she quickly unbuckled her seatbelt. I'll be quick. Wait here. She got out of the car and headed for the store entrance. Emiliano leaned back in his seat and turned on the radio. Some old song he didn't recognize was playing. He looked at the passenger seat and noticed Elia's phone. She had forgotten it. The screen lit up. A message had arrived. Emiliano glanced at it mechanically and froze. The contact was signed with a single letter, T. The text of the message read, I'll be waiting for you on Wednesday. As always. Emiliano's heart began to beat faster. He picked up the phone, unlocked it, there was no password, and opened the messages. What he saw made his blood run cold. Months of messages, dozens, hundreds, romantic, intimate, candid. I miss you. I can't wait to see you again. You make me happy. Elia replied in kind. Photos. Quite personal. She was in her underwear. Emiliano scrolled through the correspondence with trembling fingers. Not a single clue as to who this man was. No name. Just the letter T. In the last message sent this morning, the man wrote, Wednesday, same place. Last time before you get married, we need to say goodbye. Elia replied, I know, I'll be there. Emiliano closed the phone and put it back on the seat. His hands were shaking, his head was spinning. He stared straight ahead, seeing nothing. Elia was cheating on him. How long had it been going on? A month? More? Who was this man? One of her colleagues? An old friend? A stranger? A few minutes later, Elia returned with a shopping bag. She opened the door, got into the car, and smiled at him. Shall we go? Emiliano nodded. He started the car and drove out of the parking lot. Inside, he felt empty. He felt no anger, no pain, only a cold, oppressive nothingness. You look pale, Elia remarked. Are you okay? Yes, he replied in an even voice. Just tired. He drove her home, said goodbye, and left. Elia didn't even notice that she had forgotten her phone. She picked it up from the seat as she got out, suspecting nothing. Emiliano drove through the evening streets of Dallas, and one thought ran through his head. Wednesday. The usual place. The last time. He would find out who this man was. He would find out the truth. Emiliano didn't sleep all night. He lay in the darkness of his apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying the messages he had seen on Elia's phone in his head. Every word, every phrase, every photo. Who was this T? Why just one letter? Elia was being careful, that was obvious. She didn't want to leave any traces, but she had made a mistake by leaving her phone in the car. And now Emiliano knew. On the morning of March 9th, he arrived at work earlier than usual. The North Park Mall was just opening. Salespeople were setting up their displays, cleaners were washing the floors, and security guards were patrolling the premises. Emiliano changed into his uniform in the staff room and went out into the hallway. His shift started at 9 in the morning and lasted until 6 in the evening. He usually patrolled the first floor, checked the CCTV cameras, and kept order. The work was boring, but right now that suited him just fine. He needed someone to talk to. Brett Harper showed up at 10. He looked the same as always. Tired face, dull eyes, slightly rumpled uniform. Brett had been divorced for 3 years, lived alone in a rented apartment, and rarely smiled. Emiliano knew that the divorce had been difficult. His ex-wife had taken their daughter and moved to another state. Brett saw his child once every 6 months, if he was lucky. They met at the security desk on the second floor. There were few visitors. It was a weekday morning, and most of the stores were still half empty. Brett poured himself some coffee from a thermos, sat down on a chair, and took out his phone. You look worse than usual, he said, without looking up from the screen. Emiliano stood next to him, leaning on the counter. He was silent for a few seconds, then made up his mind. Brett, I need your advice. Brett put down his phone and looked at him. I'm listening. Yesterday I found some messages on Elia's phone. She's been cheating on me. For a long time, it seems. Months. Brett didn't look surprised. He nodded as if he had heard something completely expected. What are you going to do? I don't know. Emiliano rubbed his face with his hands. I don't know who this person is. He's listed in her contacts with a single letter. T. No name, no clues. They agreed to meet on Wednesday, at some place that's usual for them. The last time before the wedding. She's going to marry you and continue cheating on you. Brett took a sip of coffee. Classic. My ex did the same thing. Only I found out after the wedding. I lived in ignorance for 3 years until someone told me they saw her with another guy in a restaurant. Emiliano listened, feeling a cold rage growing inside him. How did you find out who he was? I put a program on her phone, Brett said calmly, without emotion. A program to track her location. It shows where the phone is in real time. I followed her for a week, and she led me straight to him. A hotel on the outskirts of town. Cheap, by the hour. They met there every Tuesday while I was at work. And what did you do? I filed for divorce, Brett shrugged. What else could I do? I had the evidence. She couldn't deny it. She took our daughter and left. That's the whole story. Emiliano was silent. Divorce wasn't what he wanted. He wanted to know the truth. He wanted to see the face of the man who was ruining his life. That program, he said slowly. Does it still work? There are plenty of programs like that. Brett took out his phone and started searching for something. I used one called Track Now. It's easy to install, runs in the background, and doesn't show up in the list of active apps on the phone. You need to get into her phone, download the program, install it, set it up to sync with your phone, and then hide the icon in a folder so she doesn't see it. It'll take about 5 minutes if you work fast. 5 minutes, Emiliano repeated. Yeah, the main thing is that she doesn't catch you. If she notices you messing with her phone, it's all over. She'll delete the program and become even more cautious. Brett showed him his phone screen, the app's page in the store. Emiliano memorized the name and the instructions. Brett explained in detail, step by step, as if he were talking about repairing a broken lock, not spying on someone. Women always lie, Brett said, putting his phone away. Remember that. They lie when they say they love you. They lie when they swear they'll be faithful. They lie even when they look you in the eye. It's in their nature. The sooner you realize that, the less disappointment you'll have. Emiliano didn't respond. He didn't know if he agreed with that. But right now, Brett's words seemed true. The rest of the day passed slowly. Emiliano patrolled the corridors, checked the cameras, and resolved minor conflicts. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he had to eject a teenager who was trying to steal sneakers from a sports store. At 5:30, an elderly woman lost her purse and accused the salesperson of stealing it. Emiliano found the bag in the restroom, where the woman had put it and forgotten it. It was a routine, uneventful day. However, his thoughts were elsewhere. He was considering how to access Elia's phone. He needed an excuse to visit her. He needed time for her to leave her phone unattended. 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. When his shift ended, Emiliano changed his clothes and went out to the parking lot. He got into his Honda and took out his phone. He dialed Elia's number. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hi. Her voice sounded normal, without tension. Hi. Listen, I was thinking, maybe I could come over tonight? I want to discuss some details about the wedding, about the guests, the seating, all that stuff. Elia paused for a second. Now? Okay, come over. I'm home. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and started the car. His hands were shaking. He downloaded the Track Now app to his phone while waiting at a red light. The installation took a minute. The program requested permission, and he confirmed everything. The interface was simple: a map, a list of devices, settings. The list was empty for now. Emiliano put his phone on the passenger seat and focused on the road. Elia lived in the Lakewood neighborhood, in a small brick house she rented with her friend Chanel. Emiliano parked by the sidewalk and got out of the car. It was getting dark. The streetlights were coming on. He walked up the porch and rang the doorbell. Elia opened the door almost immediately. She was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, her hair down. She looked tired. Come in, she said, stepping aside. Emiliano went inside. The house was small but cozy. The living room had an old sofa, a TV, and a coffee table. Something was cooking, maybe chicken. Is Chanel home? Emiliano asked. No, she's working the night shift. She won't be back until tomorrow morning, Elia said as she walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa. So, what did you want to discuss? Emiliano sat down next to her. He took out his phone and opened his notes, where he had written down a few questions about the wedding. He had prepared in advance so that the conversation would seem natural. I wanted to clarify the guest list. You said you invited some of your colleagues from work. How many will there be? 3. Elia leaned back on the sofa. Dr. Kimball and 2 girls from the front desk. They confirmed they're coming. Okay. What about the seating arrangement at the restaurant? Do your parents want to sit closer to us, or do they not care? They don't mind. Mom said the main thing is to have a good view. They continued discussing the details for about 10 minutes. Emiliano asked questions, and Elia answered. Her phone was lying on the coffee table, screen down. Emiliano glanced at it, waiting for the right moment. "Listen, I'm going to take a shower," Elia said suddenly, getting up from the sofa. "I've been on my feet all day today. I'm tired. Can you wait 15 minutes? Then we'll continue." "Of course," Emiliano nodded, trying to keep his voice calm. Elia took a towel from the closet and headed for the bathroom. The door closed and the sound of water could be heard. Emiliano waited a few seconds, listening. The water was running steadily. Elia was in the shower. He took her phone from the table. The screen unlocked immediately. She hadn't set a password after that incident in the car, or maybe it was just a coincidence. Emiliano quickly opened the App Store, found Track Now, and began the installation. The program downloaded slowly. He stared at the download indicator, clenching his jaw. 30%, 50, 70. The water in the shower continued to run. The program installed. Emiliano opened it and entered the synchronization settings. His phone number. Confirmation. The program requested permission to access geolocation. He confirmed. Then he pressed and held the app icon and dragged it to the Utilities folder on the second page of the home screen. Elia was unlikely to look there. The icon disappeared from view. Emiliano took out his phone and opened Track Now on his device. The list of devices updated. An entry appeared. Elia's phone. He clicked on it. The map loaded, showing a dot. The house in Lakewood. Current location. Everything was working. He put Elia's phone back on the table, screen down, just as it had been before. Then he leaned back on the sofa, took out his phone, and pretended to read the news. His heart was pounding. His hands were clammy. 10 minutes later, the water stopped running. Another 5 minutes later, Elia came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, her hair wet. She went into the bedroom and closed the door. Emiliano continued to sit on the sofa, looking at his phone. When Elia returned, dressed in clean clothes, he looked up and smiled. "So, shall we continue?" They discussed a few more details, the music in the restaurant, the menu, the number of tables. Emiliano tried to act natural, asking questions and nodding at her answers. Elia didn't notice anything suspicious. She even relaxed, smiled, and joked. It was strange to see her pretending that everything was fine, knowing that she was lying to his face. An hour later, Emiliano got up from the sofa. "I have to go. I have to get up early tomorrow." "Okay." Elia walked him to the door. "Thanks for coming by. I'm glad we talked everything through." She kissed him on the cheek. Emiliano hugged her, feeling disgusted with himself. Not with her, with himself, for pretending, for playing this game. "See you tomorrow," he said, and went outside. He got in the car, started the engine, and drove off. After a few blocks, he pulled over and checked the app. Elia's phone was still showing up on the map, the house in Lakewood. Everything was working. Now he could track her every move. It was late, almost 10 o'clock. Emiliano didn't want to go home. An empty apartment, silence, thoughts that wouldn't leave him alone. He turned the car around and drove in the other direction, to his mother's house. Rosa Flores lived in a small house in the Oak Cliff neighborhood. The house was old, the paint on the walls was peeling, the porch creaked. But inside, it was always clean and smelled of home cooking. Emiliano parked outside the house and walked up to the porch. The lights were on in the windows. He knocked on the door. His mother opened the door almost immediately. She was wearing a robe, her hair tucked under a scarf. She looked surprised. "Emiliano, what's going on?" "Nothing, Mom. Just wanted to stop by." Rosa let him in. The house was warm. There was a pot of stew on the stove. She always cooked more than she could eat, in case someone dropped by. "Have you had dinner?" she asked. "No." "Sit down. I'll heat it up for you." Emiliano sat down at the kitchen table. Rosa took out a plate, put some meat and vegetables on it, and put it in the microwave. She moved slowly. Years of working in the laundry had taken their toll. Her back hurt, her hands were tired, But she never complained. When the food was ready, she placed the plate in front of her son and sat down opposite him. "You look tired," she said quietly. "A lot of work." Emiliano began to eat without looking up. "It's not because of work. I can see when something is wrong with you. What happened?" Emiliano chewed silently. He didn't know how to answer. He didn't want to tell his mother the truth. She was already worried about him. He didn't want to cause her more pain. "I'm just not sure I want this wedding," he said finally. Rosa frowned. "Why? Did something happen between you and Aaliyah?" "No, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we're rushing into it. Maybe we need more time." "Emiliano, the wedding is less than a week away. Everything has been paid for, the guests have been invited. You can't just cancel everything." "I know." He put down his fork. "I'm just tired, Mom. I'm just thinking a lot." Rosa reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. "If you don't love her, don't get married. It's better to stop now than to regret it later. But if you do love her, don't let fear destroy what you have." Emiliano looked at his mother. Her eyes were full of concern and worry. He squeezed her hand and nodded. "I'll think about it. I promise." He finished his dinner and talked with his mother a little longer, about her work, the house, little things. Then he said goodbye and left. On the way home, he checked the app again. Aaliyah's phone was still at her house. She hadn't gone anywhere. Emiliano arrived at his apartment and went to bed without changing. He stared at his phone, at the map, at the dot that showed Aaliyah's location. Wednesday, 4 days left. He would find out who this man was. He would see his face, and then he would decide what to do next. On March 12th, Emiliano woke up at 6 in the morning and checked his phone first thing. The TrackNow app showed that Aaliyah was still at home. He watched the dot on the map, waiting for it to start moving. At 7:20, the dot moved. Aaliyah left the house. Emiliano tracked her route. She drove north on Garland Road, then turned onto Medical District Drive, the dental clinic where she worked. The dot stopped and didn't move again until lunchtime. Emiliano went to work. He kept his phone nearby all day, checking the app every half hour. At lunchtime, Aaliyah left the clinic, drove a few blocks, and stopped at a fast food restaurant. 20 minutes later, she returned. In the evening, she went to the supermarket, then home. Nothing suspicious. A normal day. On March 13th, the same thing happened again. Home, work, store, home. Aaliyah did not deviate from her usual route. Emiliano began to have doubts. Maybe the meeting was canceled. Maybe they agreed on another day. He remembered the messages he saw on her phone. Wednesday, same place. Wednesday was tomorrow, March 14th. His last chance to find out the truth. On March 14th, Emiliano didn't sleep all night. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, waiting for dawn. When the clock struck 6, he got up, took a shower, and got dressed. He couldn't eat breakfast. His stomach was in knots. He got in his car and drove to work, constantly checking his phone. Aaliyah was still asleep. The dot hadn't moved. At 7:30, she left the house. The usual route, north, to the clinic. Emiliano arrived at the shopping center, changed into his uniform, and started his shift. Brett showed up at 9, nodded to him, and took his post. Emiliano didn't say anything. He just waited. At 12:45, the dot on the map began to move. Aaliyah left the clinic. Emiliano watched the screen, clutching his phone. She wasn't going to a restaurant or a supermarket. She was heading east, toward the outskirts of the city. The dot moved along Skyline Road, then turned onto Buckner Avenue. The Pleasant Grove neighborhood is one of the poorest areas of Dallas. The dot slowed down and stopped. Emiliano zoomed in on the map. The address, Sunset Lodge Motel, 3200 Buckner Avenue. He knew the place, a cheap hourly motel where prostitutes, drug addicts, and those with nowhere else to go stayed. Aaliyah was there. He didn't think. He just got up, walked into the staff room, and opened his locker. At the bottom, under his uniform and gym bag, lay a Glock 19 pistol. Emiliano had bought it 2 years ago on the black market from an acquaintance who traded in weapons. He had never registered it, kept it at home, and sometimes took it to the shooting range. For the past few months, he had been carrying it to work, even though it was against the rules, just in case. He took the gun, checked the magazine, 17 rounds. He hid the weapon behind his belt under his shirt. He closed the locker and left the room. Brett was standing at the security desk, talking on the radio to someone on the first floor. Emiliano walked past him without saying a word and headed for the exit. "Hey, where are you going?" Brett called after him. Emiliano didn't turn around. He went out to the parking lot, got into his car, and started the engine. His hands were shaking. He drove out of the parking lot and headed east. He was speeding along the way. The speedometer showed 120 kilometers per hour in a zone where the speed limit was 80. He cut off several cars on Thornton Freeway, nearly colliding with a truck that braked sharply and honked at him. Emiliano didn't notice anything around him. He saw only the road, only the way to the motel. His mind was empty. No thoughts, no emotions, only cold determination. 20 minutes. He reached Buckner Avenue and turned into the parking lot of the Sunset Lodge Motel. The building was 1 story, gray, with peeling paint and rusty drain pipes. A row of doors with numbers stretched along the facade. The parking lot was almost empty, a few old cars, 1 motorcycle. Emiliano parked at the edge of the lot and checked his phone. The point was still there. Elia was inside. He got out of the car, adjusted his shirt to hide the gun, and headed for the entrance to the administration building. The door creaked when he pushed it open. It was dark inside and smelled of cigarettes. Behind the counter sat a man in his 50s, bald, with yellow teeth and an indifferent expression. He was watching a program on television. "I need some information," Emiliano said as he approached the counter. The administrator looked up from the screen and looked at him. "What information?" "A girl arrived here about 20 minutes ago. 27 years old, dark hair, medium height. Which room did she go to?" The administrator smiled. "I can't disclose information about guests. It's confidential." Emiliano took out his wallet, pulled out 2 $20 bills, and placed them on the counter. The administrator looked at the money, then at Emiliano. He took the bills and put them in his pocket. "Room 7. At the end of the corridor on the right." Emiliano turned and left. He walked along the building, past the numbered doors. Number 7 was the last one. An old ashtray full of cigarette butts stood in front of the door. Emiliano stopped and put his hand on the handle. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open. The room was small and dirty. The ceiling was stained, and the wallpaper was peeling in the corners. A bed stood in the middle, covered with a cheap bedspread. Elia and Tyler lay half-naked on the bed. Emiliano stopped in the doorway. A moment of realization. Not just cheating, betrayal by his best friend. The person he trusted more than anyone else. The person who was supposed to be the best man at his wedding. Tyler was the first to notice him. He jumped out of bed, his eyes wide with shock. "Emiliano, wait. I can explain." Elia turned around and saw her fiancé in the doorway. Her face turned pale. She opened her mouth but didn't say a word. Emiliano pulled out a gun. His hand was steady, no trembling. He raised the weapon and aimed it at Tyler. "Emiliano, don't!" Tyler raised his hands. "Please, listen to me." The first shot rang out. The sound was deafening in the confined space. The bullet hit Tyler in the chest, and he staggered backward, falling onto the bed. Elia screamed. Emiliano turned the gun and shot her, once, twice, 3 times. She fell to the floor, blood splattering on the wall. Tyler tried to get up, gasping for breath, clutching his chest. Emiliano moved closer and continued shooting. 4, 5, 6 shots at Tyler. 7, 8. Tyler stopped moving. His body went limp. Emiliano turned to Elia. She was lying on the floor, her eyes open, motionless. He fired several more shots, 9, 10, 11, in the head, in the chest. Tyler groaned again. He tried to crawl toward the door, leaving a trail of blood behind him. Emiliano approached him and stood next to him. He fired again. 12, 13, 14. Blood flowed from multiple wounds, soaking the floor. Tyler gasped for air. Emiliano crouched down and looked him in the eyes. He fired the last 3 shots. 15, 16, 17. Silence. Only the ringing in his ears. Emiliano stood in the middle of the room, holding the gun. Elia lay against the wall, her face covered in blood. Tyler lay by the door, his body riddled with bullets. The smell of gunpowder and blood filled the air. Emiliano lowered his hand with the gun and turned around. He left the room and closed the door. There was no one in the parking lot. He walked to his car and got behind the wheel. He put the gun on the passenger seat. He started the engine. But he didn't have time to leave. Sirens could be heard in the distance. One of the guests had heard the shots and called the police. A minute later, 2 patrol cars pulled into the parking lot. The police jumped out, drew their weapons, and pointed them at him. "Get out of the car! Hands on your head!" Emiliano turned off the engine. He opened the door, slowly got out, and raised his hands. The police surrounded him, and one of them grabbed the gun from the car. Emiliano did not resist. He stood motionless, staring at the ground, while they twisted his arms behind his back and handcuffed him. The gun fell to the asphalt with a dull thud. "You are under arrest on suspicion of murder," said one of the police officers. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court." Emiliano wasn't listening. He was staring at the door of room 7, the door behind which lay 2 bodies, 2 people he knew, 2 people he trusted, 2 people who had betrayed him. They put him in a patrol car. Several more police cars pulled up to the motel, and officers cordoned off the building with yellow tape. One of them went into room 7 and came out a minute later, pale. He said something into his radio. An ambulance arrived soon after, but there was nothing the medics could do. Both were dead. Emiliano sat in the back seat of the patrol car and stared out the window. He felt no remorse. He felt no relief. Only emptiness. The car started moving, taking him away from the motel, from the place where his old life had ended and a new one had begun, the life of a murderer.